Today I'm going to talk to you about a piece of gear I've been looking for years that I may have just found. It's sort of a holy grail for me in run and gun filmmaking, and that is wireless video transmission with low latency and minimal footprint. So what I mean by that is I want to be able to transmit from the camera to a wireless monitor with low latency, so whatever comes off this camera goes to the monitor without much delay. And I need a small footprint because the way I shoot, I need the camera to be light and mobile and able to be put on a gimbal. And also I want the receiver to be not too cumbersome to take around. So I may have found my answer here. This is the Hollyland Mars 400 wireless video system. So I've got the transmitter on the camera here so you can get a good sense of the size. And the receiver is behind me, hooked up to the TV, and I'm going to do a demo with that in a minute. So first of all, let's take a look at this transmitter. I had it mounted on a shoe mount from a wireless audio kit that I had before, and I put a bunch of this adhesive. It's like sort of like Velcro, so it just sticks. The Mars 400 did come with its own mounting kit. I just prefer this way instead. So here we have the transmitter. It's very lightweight. Most of the weight comes actually from the battery. L-series batteries, L-type, Sony batteries, they're very common. It's got two antennae. These are removable for transit. And if you also want the absolute minimum footprint, you can operate it without these antennae. My results were less than stellar, but if you're going to be very close to the transmitter, for instance, if it's just on a gimbal, and your receiver is going to be attached to the gimbal and you just want like a wireless transmission between the camera and the gimbal itself, then you should be fine without the antenna. Okay, so step two, you attach it to the camera, plug in the cable here to the HDMI input, and then I plug the other end into the micro HDMI output of my camera. Then I flip the power switch right here. It starts up and there's a little bit of fan noise. So I'm going to put that right next to my mic and see if you can hear that. If you're trying to use this with an on-camera mic and the same hot shoe bracket or something, I could see that being a problem, that little bit of fan noise. Otherwise, it's pretty quiet, so it's not really a concern for me. That's about all there is to it. There's nothing else you really have to configure to get it working. The question that you're probably wondering about right now is how much latency is there with this? That was my main concern. So I will give you an answer for that right now. 1, 2, 3. So that's the amount of delay you're going to get with this. So yes, there is latency, and I've already tweaked my transmitter so it's transmitting in sport mode or like low latency mode. There's a mode here that's supposed to reduce the latency as much as possible. It's already tweaked to that parameter, and this is as good as I've gotten it to be. So it's not perfect. And if I was going to use a wireless transmission system that had an outboard transmitter and an outboard receiver, this probably wouldn't be my top choice because there is that latency. But that's not the way I really want to use it. You can also transmit to an iOS device or an Android device via the Hollyland app. Basically, I won't even use that receiver for my kind of shooting. I'm only going to use the phone. Okay, and here's the really cool thing. You can have multiple devices hooked up at the same time. So each of these devices is independent of the other, which means I can turn off any of my receivers and the signal will still go to whatever's left. So that doesn't need to be on. The iPhones are not dependent on each other. These are independent receiving units. So for me, that's a lot better than wireless systems that rely on a dedicated receiver, because then if you want to receive the signal to more units, you need to buy another receiver. And you have to charge another battery for that, and you have to carry that in your bag. And it's just so much more convenient for me to have phones. Now I want to share with you how I got this mounted on my gimbal. This is the IceCam Tiny Ultra Vision. It's the gimbal I've been using for several months. And I wanted to make sure that this was actually a practical solution that I could use for real-world shooting on the gimbal without a restricted range of motion. I have the transmitter mounted to the tilt arm, the pitch arm. As you can see, it's moving with the pitch. And in case you're wondering how I mounted it on there, we've got dual lock here on the gimbal, and then the dual lock on the transmitter, and I just stick it on. That's about it. Just like that. I tried putting the hot shoe mount on top of the camera with the transmitter on that, but it threw off the balance too much of the gimbal, and it impacted my ability to go inverted. But with it mounted this way, I'm able to invert the gimbal fully with no restriction. I can pan 360. So it's a really quick and easy way to mount it, and it also makes it really easy to dismount it. One more test to do, and that is the distance test. So let's go ahead and do that. Down here, I have my A7R3 recording the feed that is being received by the iPhone. So the iPhone is getting a live feed from the wireless transmitter, and we're seeing it down there. So let's see how far I can get from this iPhone before it loses the signal. Now we have another little test. The iPhone and the A7R3 have a little pool date right now, overlooking this beautiful vista. And I'm going to back away from them going up the hill, and we're gonna more or less maintain line of sight. So now we're not gonna go into any concrete tunnels. So let's see if we can get better range this time. Okay? 3, 2, 1, let's go. Okay, so this has been my review of the Hollyland Mars 400. I think it's a really awesome, innovative step forward in wireless video. Certainly fills a gap that I needed. It's not perfect, of course. The latency could be improved. There are some sometimes unexpected bits of latency that occur that are hard for me to explain, and then it goes back to being pretty low latency. So that could definitely be improved as well. But overall, the performance is great. I love the fact that I can use an app and get low latency response at a good range of distance. And you know, that solves 90% of the problems that I was having with wireless video. Now, of course, the other half of this equation, which I haven't really addressed, is the fact that Sony cripples its cameras when you use the HDMI out. Once I hit record on this Sony camera, I can no longer see what I'm recording if I'm shooting in 4K, and I also lose my face detection autofocus. Those are really, really annoying quirks. Not the fault of Hollyland, which is why I didn't talk about it earlier, but it's definitely the fault of Sony. So Sony needs to fix that about their cameras, because it has me seriously considering moving to a different camera system just so I get better HDMI out. But anyway, that's neither here nor there when it comes to the Hollyland Mars 400. I really think it performs great. Hope you enjoyed the review. Hit subscribe if you want to see more, and I will see you next time.